Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage. This is ET Now, special daily initiative to give MSMEs and entrepreneurs the opportunity to be front and center on every industry and area that matters to you. Tonight, we're bringing you a very special conversation on the real estate industry. I'm in conversation with Venkatesh Gopalkrishnan. He's CEO of Shapoorji Pallonji Real Estate. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, Venkatesh. Let me start by talking about the company, talking about Shapoorji Pallonji and real estate and how that has really grown for you.
Thank you, Sunanda, and it's a pleasure speaking to ET Now. Shapoorji Pallonji Real Estate is the real estate development arm of Shapoorji Pallonji, and our journey has been quite interesting. Obviously, the company spans more than 150 years, but the real estate division is relatively young. I would say just 25 years old. And through the 90s and through the mid 2000s, we were largely focused on redevelopment in Mumbai and in our IT parks, where under the aegis of the SP InfoCity brand, we developed IT parks in Chennai and in Pune. But since mid of 2000, we have focused our energies to build up the residential engine for Shapoorji Pallonji Real Estate, and we've been successful in the last decade to develop this considerably. And as we speak, we have more than 50 million square feet of construction and development to do over the next 5 to 6 years, and currently we are developing about 15 million square feet. So it's been quite an interesting journey and quite a challenging journey.
Okay. The market has changed considerably over the last 5, 6, 7 years. The market has opened up. Real estate has seen a lot of interest, a lot of commentary, a lot of action, really, if I can call it that. What have been some of the biggest changes from an industry point of view?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's quite a bit of change in the market. From an industry point of view, talking about the demand, over the last 3 to 4 years, the demand has been quite tepid for houses. Even from the middle income to the luxury segment, more towards the luxury segment. But having said that, I think we are quite positive that the tide could change in the next 1.5 to 2 years, because the real estate residential segment has got a very high correlation to economic growth. And obviously with a lag, once the economic growth settles down and starts growing, we see the residential real estate segment growing.
Let me talk then about government regulation. This is perhaps one of those industries that sees the most commentary when it comes to government regulation. The biggest of those, let me talk about GST. What has been the impact for you as a company, how you prepared for it, and your advice for small companies that are really, we are in a phase where while GST has been announced, a lot of companies are still seeing the transition. The government also admits it's going to take at least 6 to 8 months before things settle down. Your advice then to those watching our show, how have you prepared for it? What have been the changes?
I think starting overall, I think one country, one tax is welcome. And in any kind of large change, there's going to be some kind of metamorphosis and some kind of teething trouble. And as you said, it will take about 6 to 8 months. The way we are looking at it is that it actually eases business in the medium to long term. You have clarity in terms of your taxes, especially your indirect taxes, and your tax credits which you were not getting earlier, you will now get it through the GST. And also developers like us could benefit from lower landed costs from our vendors, which we are happy to pass on to our customers. Yes, all of us have to get prepared. I think the advice to all the companies in the medium and small scale is that you have to have the philosophy that you have to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. And I think we are very confident that it will be more beneficial to the medium and small scale companies. Of course, it's going to be beneficial to the larger companies also, streamlining the entire tax system in the country.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's more beneficial for smaller companies?
Because I think at the end of the day, the tax impacts of companies with relatively medium size or smaller size turnovers could be quite debilitating, and also the ability for them to actually manage their value chain in a manner where they can get landed cost benefits, and all adding to the bottom line from a volume perspective is, or a impact perspective is much higher for a medium sized company.
Okay, so have you started passing on the price benefits to your customers already? Are you also seeing it happening as part of an industry, at an industry level?
Yeah, I think number one, we have started passing on the benefit. And number two, yes, it has been happening at the industry-wide level, although on an ad hoc basis at different levels and at different rates, but it has started happening.
Okay. The next piece of legislation, of course, is RERA. Came in
Right.
with a big bang earlier this year.
Right.
Has it been all positive? Any concerns there? Have the changes from that really settled down for the industry?
I think the RERA is basically a regulation which balances out the equation between the developer and the customer. From that perspective, I think it's going to be something which is going to set a fair and equitable market for both the developer as well as the buyer. Now, of course, there are teething problems, and largely RERA is looking at self-governance from a developer's perspective and discipline from a developer's perspective, using the money raised for a particular project in that project. Of course, if you have such a large regulation, there may be certain things which you may not agree to as a developer. But I think the way we are looking at it, and I would advise all the companies to look at it, is that it's a regulation and it is for the benefit of the industry, it is for the benefit of the customer. Whatever is to the benefit of the customer ultimately is going to benefit the developer in the long term. So everybody has to acknowledge it, adhere to it and move ahead. I think that's the advice I would give.
Okay, and RERA has also had an impact on prices along with GST.
It has, of course. I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think the main thing is that people feel that the money will be stuck into the RERA account and get withdrawn a little more slowly, which will increase the working capital requirements, which will add pressure on your finances. But I think over a period of time, these things will smoothen out.
Okay. We have a 20-city roadshow on Leaders of Tomorrow. No matter what city or town that we travel to, the entrepreneurs that we meet with all have one basic question: how do we raise funds? So funds and finance really is at the heart of everything that an entrepreneur does, clearly. What has the situation, how has the situation really changed on the ground? I do know that till about 2016, banks were sitting on this decade high NPA, so the lending had slowed down a little. Have things started changing? Your advice to a small developer who's looking to raise funds about how they should go about doing that?
I think the way the lenders were looking at the real estate sector, or some of them are certainly looking at even now, they're looking at it with a kind of risk perspective which is relatively higher than other asset classes which they lend to. And it has also been the fact that many developers, despite their best efforts, have not been able to deliver. So there have been a lot of wrong choices, etc., which have led to NPAs in the banking system on the real estate perspective. But when you look ahead, I think the most important thing is that if you have the financial discipline of sticking to your plan in terms of your construction, in terms of usage of funds, etc., and have that discipline across projects and demonstrate it to a lender, I think he will be more than happy to give you money. I think my advice is that stick to your business plan. Of course, there are going to be market challenges. Take that into account when you're making your business plans and talk to the lender transparently. And I see that now going ahead with RERA, with more governance coming in, lenders should start looking at the real estate sector both from the small, medium and large perspective a little differently. Okay. I certainly hope so.
So you're saying lenders should? Does this mean that bankers are still wary when it comes to lending to the space?
I would admit yes.
Okay.
The bankers are still wary. I think they are wary because one is that the demand has been tepid. The second is, it is very difficult, even if you enforce security, how are you going to take that project ahead? Ultimately, in a half-finished project, you can't sell the land and recover your money. So, since it's a going concern at all points of time, it is very important for a banker to assess whether the developer is going to take the project to fruition. And I think we have to help the bankers understand this by being disciplined and making our business plans very clear.
Okay. So, that is one scenario, of course. But what is the option for a small company that's looking to raise funds? A larger company, a company like yourself, could look at, say, PE funds, could look at REITs maybe.
Right.
AIMS is also an option available to large companies.
Right.
Most of which are not an option really for
Right.
a small developer.
Right.
What's your advice to them?
No, I think number one is that don't execute more than what you can. Okay. So, I think what I'm trying to say is that take leverage very reasonably. Okay. Of course, apart from PE, apart from banks, apart from NBFCs, typically I think you have covered more than 80–90% of the funding avenues. So I would not say that there are too many other funding avenues for a developer. And of course the government is working on regulations to get in more FDI. The government is working on regulations to recapitalize banks, to have more money coming to all sectors, including real estate. I'm sure that these 3–4 categories which you talked about will have enough of money to lend to real estate, but take money reasonably, be clear about your plans. I think that is my advice.
All right, let's talk about building a brand for yourself,
right,
and your advice for the viewers of our show about how they should build a brand for themselves, given especially that in the real estate market in India, you have the really small developers, the ones who are building say just about one project which possibly is unbranded, competing with players like yourself.
Right, I think brand is something which you earn over a period of time. Okay. You don't start with it, unfortunately, and of course you do start with a brand, but that brand builds over a period of time, and it builds over a period of time based upon your delivery capabilities, how you performed in the managed market, and how you have delivered vis-a-vis your stakeholders. Sure. So for example, let me take the example of Joyful Shapoorji, which is a middle income brand which we are still trying to build. I could equate that to the question which you asked as a mid-sized developer who's trying to build the brand, because it's a new brand, although it's under the Shapoorji Pallonji umbrella. I think we are very careful as to how we are going to actually build that brand from first principles. Okay, that brand will get known 3–4 years from now, but the journey from now to then has to be based on first principle execution, first principle focus on the customer, financial discipline, and corporate governance. I think once you do that, and you have to be patient when you build brands. I think once you do that and once the brand is built, I think then the benefits start flowing in.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by first principles?
I think first principles is essentially you focus on delivery. Okay, you focus on doing the right processes in terms of your sales and marketing, your execution, your designs, etc. And just stick to your job, because I think what will happen is, as I said, the brand is going to actually be built over a period of time based on your track record.
So then let's talk a little more about your affordable housing play.
Sure.
What's the plan, what's the strategy there?
Sure. So Sunanda, I think Joyful Shapoorji is a middle income housing joint venture. We have investors such as Standard Chartered Private Equity, IFC and ADB. The plan is to build about 16 to 18 million square feet of middle income housing across the country, across about 6 to 7 projects. As we speak, we have acquired 4 projects. Our projects are in Kolkata, in Mumbai, in Pune, and in the NCR. Of course, in the outskirts, because it's middle income housing. And we're looking at projects in Hyderabad and Bangalore. Okay. So by March of 2018, we would have acquired the entire portfolio of projects, and we would have launched at least 3 projects out of that, and we hope to complete and execute these projects in the next 6 to 7 years. Okay. And of course, in the journey, build a brand, which is Joyful Shapoorji.
Venkatesh, do hold that thought. We'll take a very quick break, but much more on the other side on the special conversation on real estate. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. With us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're bringing you a special half-hour interview on real estate. A report I was reading has said that between January of this year to June of this year, in a 6-month period, 62% of all new launches have been in the affordable housing segment, which also ties in with the government's mission and vision of housing for all by 2022. Your advice then to small players who are looking at this, I mean, should your strategy be different if you are looking at the affordable housing segment? How should it be different? How should you make a mark for yourself?
So I think, when you're looking at a business plan for a particular segment of residential, there are 2–3 things you look at. One is the demand and the depth of the demand. In lower middle income housing and middle income housing, given the demography of the country, I think there is a huge depth in that demand. Of course, the market is slow now, but it is going to be very sustainable. That is one thing. The second thing you look at is where is the government going in terms of its incentives, and both together actually give affordable housing a great advantage. One is that there is fundamental end user demand, and all the incentives are going to be beneficial for an end user.
Okay, so let's also talk about what's happening as far as technology is concerned. A lot of e-commerce sites are now actively selling housing and houses online.
Sure.
Is that a boon for a small developer to be able to tap into those e-commerce platforms? Have you looked at that platform?
No, I think, we just had a channel partner meet yesterday. I think technology is going to change the way selling is going to happen, because ultimately real estate residential is a B2C business. So the answer, Sunanda, is a clear yes. I think e-commerce and technology and all these platforms are going to really help, because they widen the reach and the communication goes to a vast audience, and therefore it is obviously going to result in footfalls and conversions.
Okay, so speaking of technology then, how should developers be using technology? Because it's not just at the front end where you're using it to sell your projects, but it also, I'm sure, there's a lot of back end where you can have technology integration.
So there are two ways to do it. One is to create it in-house. That probably requires a bit of scale. The second is to have the right channel partners working with you. So the channel partners, where they are big names and smaller names involved, are aligned to this new world of digital and technology for selling residential real estate apartments. And if you have a good project, however small or big you are, I think they will align with you. So you should have the right channel partner network who is aligned to technology, who is aligned to e-commerce, and also, you need not build the entire backend at one instance. You can build it over a period of time.
Okay. I also want to talk about what really is happening as far as so one mission of the government, of course, is affordable housing for all. But they're also talking about Skill India, and yours is an industry that depends on manpower, a certain percentage of which has to be skilled and has to have the requisite skill sets. Is it a challenge finding the skilled manpower for your industry?
I have to admit the answer is yes. Given the scale of development which is happening on an organized and unorganized basis, I think what is going to happen is that the scaling in this sector with technology will need to be much higher, and therefore the labor intensity of this sector is going to go down over a period of time. So in fact, we have a consortium called a Sustainable Housing Leadership Consortium with other brands such as Tata's, Godrej and Mahindra, and we are actually working with the National Skill Development Corporation to find solutions as to how we can skill our labor force to cater to a new technology driven era in the future.
Okay, and has that been easy? What's the progress there been like?
I think we have just initiated that. We've not yet got the recommendations, but many developers like us, for example, we are developing Asia's largest mass housing project in Kolkata. It's a project called Sukhobrishti in Rajarhat, and we have developed at the project a skills development program, which is captive, and also the laborers who are working on other projects. And this was developed nearly 6 to 7 years back when we had initiated this project, and a lot of large developers have done it. But I think what is important, Sunanda, is that it should be an industry-wide phenomenon, and the government also has to get into it. The technical agencies and the education institutes also have to get into it, and then everybody will come together to create that kind of skilled workforce which the industry actually demands.
Okay, so in the meanwhile, while the government, of course, is working with companies like yourself, you're talking about the consortium, etc. For a small player, is training at their end the only option then?
See, right now, there is the major option is training at their end, and of course, the perspective of the supervisor is very important, because if you have skilled and experienced supervisors, they can impart training to the labor force in a much more effective manner. So I think my advice to medium and small size companies is hire qualified and experienced supervisors and managers who actually skill and train their workforce.
In the beginning of this interview, I was talking about how they're really small players and then they're the really large players. Do you expect then there could be some sort of consolidation between the small and the large players? How do you, for instance, work with small players?
I think essentially one is from a real estate development perspective. Sometimes we have landowners who give us the land to develop, who may be medium-sized companies. And of course, in our vendor chain, in our contractor chain, there are several medium and small-sized companies whom we work with. I think as long as you're focused and you're very clear about what you have to do, don't take too much of leverage, do only what you can in terms of your execution capabilities, if you look at the agglomeration of the medium or small size players to cater to the housing demand of such a large country, I think it is very significant that these medium and large size players will continue to play a very important role in the real estate residential development in the country.
Okay. What are the next few years looking like for you then?
I think we are quite excited. I think as I said, we have a huge pipeline, close to 50 million square feet across the country, across middle income housing, middle to high income housing, luxury housing. I think we are going to be in for a challenging time for the next 2 years. My personal feeling that is the demand will ease out after that. But we are focused on the process, we are focused on our organization, we are focused on doing business the right way, we are focused on our partnerships with channel partners, with contractors, and I think we will overcome the challenge over the next 2 years and do well beyond that.
Okay, my last question to you. We're coming up on the budget early
Sure.
next year.
Yeah.
One key expectation or one or two key expectations from an industry point of view that you have of the government?
No, I think one is obviously the generic request on the corporate tax levels. The second is while they have moved towards giving industry status to affordable housing and have got specific incentives to affordable housing, if they can have some things of a single window clearance, for approvals for affordable housing, and some incentives which will actually enable people to launch their projects quicker. And the third one is that a package, as you said, I think earlier in your interview, that raising finance is a little different. Some kind of a package or some kind of a allocation to the state-led banks towards affordable housing, that will really help.
Venkatesh, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow. If you have any feedback for us on this show or you have any questions for us, you can always write in at leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com. On social media, tweet at me at Sunanda_J, that's my personal Twitter handle, or LOT_ET now on Facebook. Reach us on Leaders of Tomorrow on ET now. You can also call us on that number you see on your screen. We love hearing from you. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good night.